Hi everyone, welcome back to Bernina Club. So I'm going to show you quite a few weird and wonderful little things today and some handy hints. So as you know, I have quite a few grandchildren, and so I've decided to make them all a little Fluro Vests because one of them asked because he decided he wanted to be a road worker and he's 5 years old. So I thought that was pretty funny. He's changed his mind and I think he's going to be a vet now, I'm not sure. So we have now got in the proper hi-vis fabric to make some vests, and we have it in the yellow and we have it in the orange. So we needed to make sure we had plenty of the hi-vis tape. Now this hi-vis tape, it looks like it's just the same on both sides, but the lighter color side is the side that shines in the dark. Okay, we also, this one is a sewable one. Oh, you can see the two colors there. The dark side is the wrong side and the light side's the right side. So that glows in the dark and shines when the light's on it, should I say. And this one here we sell in the packet, and this is a band reflector tape. Now the beauty about this one, and I must take some home to put on my pack, because when we were fishing the other night I couldn't find my pack. Had my headlamp on, and if I'd had some reflector tape I would have been able to find it. So this reflector tape is actually just sticks on, so it can stick on to anything, and it's waterproof. So I'm going to take some of this home and put it on my pack for when I go fishing at night, and then I can find my pack. So we sell this on the card, and it's $16.50, and there is 1.2 meters and it's 20 millimeter wide. So if you need to stick it onto a pack or a backpack, or you just want to stick it onto your bike or whatever, that is a very, very good one. Here they're showing a skateboard, whatever you want to put it onto. But the one we're going to use is the one that you sew on. Now when you're going to sew this on, you can use your ordinary polyester thread, but it's very, very light, so I put on a very fine needle. Now when you use the fine needles on the sewing machines, you cannot use the needle threader. So I'm going to thread my machine up, and I'm going to hand thread my needle. So make sure your foot is up when you're doing it. And I can't use my needle threader, so just cut your thread on an angle and use your great eyesight and put it in. Now I've made patterns up, so how cute is this pattern? So I'm only going to show you how to sew one piece. But what I've done is I've cut a pattern out with one front, and obviously you turn it over to do the second one. I've given you the markings to do it, and on the back it goes like this, and then it just goes across here like this. So up the right way. Oh, did I sew that one up the wrong way? I might be telling you porkies. The light side's the wrong side, the dark side's the right side. And one moment while we just turn the phone off. Oops. I didn't do that, I'm innocent. So I'm just going to pin it. So take back everything I said. The dark side is the right side. And I've put the markings on the pattern, so you'll be able to see on the pattern, and you don't want too many pins in them. By the way, whoever's left these pins, I found them in this container, and you can come and get them. They're very pretty, and I'm stealing a couple. So whoever owns these pins, come and get them from Bernina. You've left them in your container, and I'm stealing two. They're very, very pretty, and I've kept them in the container the whole time, and I just found them just a minute ago. So come and get your pins. Right. So I'm just putting one braid across here. Now obviously the best foot to sew that is going to be your number 10 edge stitch foot. So the number 10 edge stitch foot is this one here, and as you know, it's all cut out in the middle. Once again, the number 5 has the bar through the middle, so I always like to show you every time so you're very clear. I could use a number 5 and make sure the needle position was going to the left only, but if I've got this one I can have the needle position left or right or zigzag. Okay, so I'm going to put the number 10 on, and I'm going to move my needle position 2 clicks to the left, and I'm going to lengthen my stitch out to about 3 because I am top stitching. I've just put white in the bobbin because it really won't matter. And I'm just going to just see if that's far enough. No, I'm going to move it further over because I've only got the small foot on. Now let me have a look. Happier with that. Now I don't need to worry about where it is positioned because the bar is running along the edge of the braid and it will stitch perfectly to the left as long as I go nice and slow. If you're worried about it moving, you could put a couple of dabs of glue, but it doesn't tend to move anywhere. So I'm just edge stitching it down both sides. Now sometimes when you're edge stitching, some things like to move. So you might like to start them both from this side and sew this way, which is a good reason to use your number 10 foot, because if you have a look, I'm going to sew down with the left on this way, and then I'm going to start again at the other end. So I'm going to cut that, and instead of turning my work around, I can just put my needle position all the way to the right, and I can sew from this side, and then I know I won't get any movement in my braid. So there is good reasons why it is good to get a number 10 foot. Okay, so just hold your work flat and edge stitch it down both sides, so it's nice and quick and easy to make. Now obviously I'm not going to show you how to make the whole thing because it's too easy, but I just wanted to show you the braid and that we have the hi-vis fabric, and you can make anybody them. Now we wear them when we're on our bikes because they are brilliant and you want people to see you. Just trim that off. So obviously when I'm putting this together, oh that's another back, when I'm putting this together, you want to match up your braids here like that. And I'll steal your 2 pins again. And then you want to match up your sides, and so just match up your sides. So you'll see one here. I've done my shoulders and overlock them together. I've done my shoulders, and now I'm just going to sew up these sides. So I stitch and then overlock. Oh, I've forgotten I've got black thread in my bobbin. Oops. The kids won't mind. I'll put a grey beige fabric in the bottom this time. And you can do one of 2 things. You can either, I don't need to bring my bobbin thread up. What am I doing? I'm on a 7 series, don't need to worry. Just cut your thread in the bottom and then start sewing. So I'm going to clear it because it was on 3 length. I'm going to stitch this together just with your normal, with the foot, and reverse. And still with your lovely fine needle because it's not very thick fabric. Match up your sides. And then you can overlock it. So this one I'll show you is a size 8. And that little one was a size 2. Or a 2. They go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I think I made it up to a size 12. So you're more than welcome to come and trace off my patterns and make the kids some hi-vis vests. So I have 12 of them. They're going to be overlocked. And then I'm not even going to turn them under and stitch them. And then you get, I have some hi-vis, I have some thread colour, the right colour, and my, don't mind me, I'm just looking for, here it is, this. So this is the Velcro. Now everyone gets Velcro really wrong. Velcro should not be straight stitched on because it does not stay on. Velcro should be zigzagged. So I won't need too much Velcro. But when I'm going to use Velcro, I'm going to show you how I stitch it on. So clearly I'm not going to worry about changing my bobbin and I'm going to make sure that I stitch my Velcro on with the right colour thread. So I've cut my thread, I've pulled it from the needle. Oh, actually, look at this, I've got the right colour bobbin. So I am going to change it. Brilliant. Didn't see that earlier. Must have been in my stash. So I'm going to use the right colour bobbin and the right colour top, then it won't matter if I'm sewing it, whichever way I'm sewing it up. Now I'll tell you a handy hint. So if you're putting this on and you're doing right over left, you're going to have the soft side on the underneath. So it goes like that. The reason being, if you have that side underneath, it might grab the kids' jerseys or clothes and rip them because of the Velcro. So you always want to have the rough side of the Velcro facing up. So it doesn't matter which way these does up, whether it's boys or girls, honestly, this day and age, it doesn't matter. So what that means is I'm going to put the rough side on the underneath and the right side coming over. So I think I'll position it about there. That would be, no, let's go about there, because this is for one of the bigger kids. So haven't even threaded up. So I'm going to put my nice colour on top, but put the rough side facing up. Don't put it on the other side where it'll catch the kids' clothes. You want it away from their sweatshirts or their jerseys, because, oh, will this thread? No, because I've still got the fine needle on. I'm going to change that needle. I do not want to sew Velcro on with a fine needle, I can tell you that, because it will just damage my needle. So I just took that needle out and put it here. So that needle is going to go in the right spot there. Right, now I've got a bigger needle on, I'll be able to use a needle threader. If the needle thread is not damaged, it's always damaged, the shop one. So I will just do it the old-fashioned way and then get my husband to fix it, as I always have to. So when I'm doing this, I like to put my needle through there, put my foot back on, bring that down, cut my thread, shut the door. Now, I go on to zigzag. So zigzag, and it's on 3.6 and 1.5 length. So I'm going to narrow it down to go to 2.5 and 1.5, and I'm simply just going to zigzag around. We get a lot of people coming in and saying, I can't sew Velcro. What's wrong with my machine? Nothing. Just don't try and sew it with a straight stitch. You've got to make it very strong, and you also want to sew right on the very edge of that so it doesn't catch anything. Okay, needle to the right when you're turning. Oh, needle to the right, Robyn. Excellent. Knee control up, turn your work. And turn. And then just make sure you secure it. And then you've got wonderful scissor cutters. Cut it with the scissors. So now I can line it all up before I do the next one. So see, that one's coming up this way, and this is the one that'll come over. So just line up where it's going to go and make sure it's right. So if you want to make the effort and turn these all under, do. These are for kids. I'm not going to stress about top stitching everything. They can just stay overlocked. And if I ever need to tidy them up, I can turn them under and top stitch them. But I have to make 12. I'm not top stitching them. I have better things to do with my time, and that's to teach you. So I thought these will be really good, especially for the kids on the farm, because they'll be able to run for miles and they'll be seen. So I took some of the children over, we took them to the park, and one of them had the hi-vis on, and we were playing hide and seek, and he thought I couldn't see him, and I could see him for miles, and I'm like, yeah, you might want to take your hi-vis off. So yeah, it's quite funny, the things they don't think about. So there you have it. There's the little hi-vis. Just like that. So that's the front and that's the back. Okay, so that's just a fun thing you might like to make up for the kids. I have a few to finish. Let's just fire them over here. But look how cute they are. Look how little that is. That's the 2, sorry, that's the size 2. That one there, it's waiting to be stitched up. And this one that I just did is the size 8. So you can see the difference, that probably fit me. So they are very cute. So if you're keen to make them for the kids, so they are a very good thing. Now they're another very good thing to wear, you know, in all sorts of situations. If you go tramping or camping or whatever, it's quite good. Now the other thing I've been doing a lot of is making some sweatshirts for the children for winter. But there's something that I think I've forgotten to explain, and that is when I'm doing ribbing, I never ever overlock my armbands together, ever. So when you overlock them like this and you turn them through, you have way too much bulk and they don't sit flat. So if I just go to turn it, I've got all of this very thick bulk in here, and those that didn't come to Bernina Club don't get to feel how thick that is. So if you have overlocked them, you have to at least do this, which I don't want you to do anyway. But you need to halve your sleeve and you need to cut down to your row of straight stitching on your overlocking, and at least, if you're going to insist on doing them on the overlocker, at least fold one way and one the other way, so that when you fold them up, you're going to have one seam on this side and one seam on that side. So that will fold up like that, you see, and it's complete opposite. So at least then you're not having as much bulk on the cuff. But I don't want you to do any of those things. I want you to do this. This is your cuff. Find your right and wrong side. I'll just cut it because it's extremely crooked. Pretend this is your cuff or your waistband or whatever, and go like that. You use your sewing machine. Now when you're going to use your sewing machine, you're going to have it on straight sewing, and you're not going to start on the edge of your ribbon, because it's just going to eat it and take it down into your machine. So you're going to start in and you're going to sew a couple of stitches. Okay, then you're going to sew back, and then you're going to go forward. Okay, and you'll notice I've got my dual feed on my machine, so it's going to feed it nice and evenly. But this is how I'd like you to do all your ribbons. Oh, oops, just break the machine while I'm sewing. Oh, that's right, I needed to put the replacement one in here and I've forgotten to do it, haven't I? This is your thread cutter, by the way, and that cuts your thread. But this one's a broken thread cutter. This machine gets a little bit of hard work, and I can't even feel where to put it. I will just leave that off right now. That's just showing you what you don't do. Now, can you see this is my seam? The difference now is that seam can be opened out and it's nice and flat, and when you fold it together you get this wonderful flat finish, and it's really, really smooth. It's totally different than when you do it here. So it's a little bit hard for you because you can't feel it, but when you do it, you'll never do your seams ever another way. Now, I was taught this method by Kirsten Martinson, and she's a lady that designed the quick sew patterns. So it's a very good method. Now, once you've got your cuff, the next thing you want to do is you want to halve your cuff, and you want to put one pin in the opposite where your seam is, and then you do not want to do that. So what you want to do now is open it out, put your seam to your pin, and get your quarter marking. And put a pin or a mark or however you want to do it. I use pins because it's easy. Okay, then you get your other quarter marking here, so everything's sitting nice and flat. Okay. Now, when you have your garment, lost the one I had to show you, but that's Oh, yeah. So when you have your garment is corded, your ribbing is corded, so when it's stretched on, you're stretching it the full amount, but when it's turned through, everything will sit nice and flat. So with children, sometimes they don't like things tight around their neck or their arms or their everything. You can actually make the ribbing and try it over the wrist, and you can make sure it sits nice and comfortable. So that would be a good size for me. So don't always think you've got to follow the pattern. You can always try it over the kids, and especially when you're pulling it over their feet, and make sure they're happy with the comfort of it. So always remember to do that. So that's just a little handy hint about ribbing. And this one here, well, you can see this one here, you can see how bulky it is because I didn't flatten it out. It's ridiculous, but it's still fine, but I mean, I just don't like it. So I just 4-thread overlock everything together for the kids. So 4-thread overlock, I don't have to go changing it to the colours because this thread here is a perfect straight stitch. But if you do want to, you just change your left needle to the colour of your garment. And this one here has even got white on it, and it really doesn't matter. Okay, so very interesting colours. My grandchild has decided on, wait for it, this colour sweatshirting, and this fabric for an accent. So hence why we have the very interesting colour for the ribbing, and this will go like this and make a pocket for the front. Extremely interesting, but there's no way you can tell children what colours they should have. And this is the hood, and this is the outer of the hood. So you can decide whether, when you're making a crazy top up, whether you put the lining as the outside on the garment, which I think I'll do because it'll make it extreme. And when I'm joining things together, I do not use 4-thread overlocking. I just use a little 3-thread overlock because I'm going to be stitching it again. So when you're sewing the garment together is 4 threads, but when you're just neatening, you only need to use 3 threads. Okay, so that's just a handy little hint for sewing, ribbing, and a touch on that. Fire that away. Now what I would like to show you is I have taught you over the last couple of months how to do a few cool little things with braids and with pin tucking and with making your own fabrics. Okay, so when you're making your own fabric, you can then use the scraps, which these were, and this is getting used for an armchair caddy. So this will sit over the armchair. This one sits on the outside and this sits on the inside, and I can put my things, well, I wouldn't use a cutter, but I can put my sewing bits and pieces in it, and a small pair of scissors and things like that. So when I'm sitting hand stitching or whatever, I can put them in. Now look what I did. I had a moment. I even put in a place to put my scissors, but when I quilted it, I stitched through here so that my scissors didn't fall to the very bottom. They just sat there because I did it on an angle. That was a moment of brilliance. So I'll just show you that. So this pocket, I have angled my stitch, and you'll see it here, so that I have top stitched through there and my scissors don't fall all the way to the bottom. So that was a little bit of a clever thing to do. And on the top here, I've put a piece of wool fabric so that when my pins go through it, the wool fabric will sharpen my pins and not blunten them, and wool stuffing. If you were going to just have a pin cushion, you could put a bit of cardboard underneath, but I've got all this wadding and everything. My pins are never going to go through the bottom. Okay? And then on the other side, I've just got a little pocket, and I've just done exactly what we did last month, and I'm going to show you how to do the binding. And then instead of joining these together, I've just left them like that. They look cute. So that is what I've made for my one, because my one was extremely old and very ugly. So I decided that I needed to make a man one. So here's the start of it, and I've cheated, because I do sometimes. I've got pre-quilted fabric, and it's just calico. And this can go over the seat of an armchair as well. Oh, I'll just show you. And what I've done with this one is I have put some pockets, but I've kind of bagged them out so you can put your remotes in here. And I haven't finished this obviously, but I've also going to stitch just down through here. So you've got more pockets for remotes, and I've sewed a little braid on there. I won't show you the edge stitching again because I've done it with the last one. So this one will be stitched up through here just to hold that. And I've pounced the pockets out, so I haven't made them flat. With my one, I've made the pocket flat like that, and on this one I've made the pocket wider and I've pounced it out. So now it's just going to be stitched through, just through that little bit there, and it will hold those pockets. And you can see here I've just done some quilting one way, but I'm going to show you how to make these pipings in the flanges. So this here is the piping cord, and the piping foot is foot number 12. So foot number 12, we've done this many times, but I'm just showing you how you can do a piping with a little accent. So on my one, I've done piping and I've put an extra fabric in front of the piping. And on this one, I've done the piping and I've put an extra fabric at the back of the piping. So you can just decide how you want to accentuate your work. So this one is done with 2 tones of fabric. So I've got either this can be the piping and the other one can be the flange, or the other one way around. I'll use this as the flange. So I'm just going to cut my piping a little bit wider, because it's oh, I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use my cutter, and I'm just going to make sure that one's 1/4 inch more. So what's that? It's a very odd width, Robyn, but that's all right. 1/4 inch more. Oh yeah, no, I'm doing the opposite. Telling you one thing and doing another. This one is going to be the piping. I'll get it together, it's okay. So I'll leave the green thread on so you can see it, and I will put foot number 12 on, which is the piping foot. You can use foot 21 as well, and that is piping and foot 21. And I'm just going to press this because it's got a bit wonky donkey. And I've got 2 more over here to show you the other method. So just put your piping cord together. Now, by the way, this bit of fabric is 1 and an interesting size, 1 1/4. Now, with your piping foot, the piping cord is going to fit underneath the foot and feed evenly. So you know that that piping cord's going to work. So if you're not sure what size to buy, you can try that. But this size piping cord that fits under there perfectly is 4mm. So that will help you. I could go a little bit bigger, and I certainly could go smaller. So you're just going to get your raw edges together, and the wrong side of the fabrics are together, okay? You pop your piping cord underneath the foot, and you move your needle position to the right. Now, it doesn't need to be tight at this stage because you're only doing step 1. So what I've done is I've put the piping cord in, and I've moved my needle position to the right, and when I sew the next row of stitching, I'll move it 1 click to the left. So you just sew it in, but you're not doing it tight at this stage. Okay? It's quite fun to do, and it makes a really nice accent. You can do this on a garment, you can do it on craft, you can do it on anything. I just love piping around cushions, but when you add a flange to it, it adds another dimension. Cut the thread. Right, so my piping has just been stitched roughly. It's not tight by any means. So now I'm going to move the needle position one click to the left, and I know that when I stitch it on, it's going to be closer, okay? So now I can get my little flange, and I can fold that in half. And I can either, I'm going to put it on the back, but I could do either. I could either put it on the back like that, or I can put one on the front. So this one's going to go onto the back. Actually, I'm going to leave this one click to the right again until I sew it onto my other fabric, because I'm just holding it together. So this is just on the same row of stitching, raw edges together, and by the way, this was 1/4 of an inch wider than the last one. So this is 1.5. And the first one was 1 1/4. And this makes a real nice feature. And I think this is a nice man's type of finish. I like the look of this. Be nice on a pocket. Oh, that's right. Cut it with your scissors, Robyn. Okay, so there is my piping with my flange. Okay, now if I want to sew that on the garment, one needle position to the left, and I will just sew it onto something. Here we are. A bit of fabric just to show you. So I'm going to now put right side to right side facing down. And I'm going to sew it on here. Now I don't need to worry because you've got the hard piping sitting there, and you just put this over top of the piping and you've made it one click to the left. And so it's going to sew inside that last row of piping of cord. And I'm just going along the row of the holes here. That's my little guide. So my foot just sits on it. It's crazy good. You really don't have any work to do. Then you can turn it over and you have got the best ever finish you will ever get. You cannot do this finish with a zip foot. You just can't. It is absolutely perfect every time. So what you can do now, if you love that, and you think, oh, I want to top stitch that, you could then put your, I might use the edge stitch foot, it's too close. Put your edge stitch foot on number 10. And I'll do it with the green because you can really see it, what I'm doing with it. So if I wanted to top stitch that now, I would put the bar of the foot along my piping, and I'll move my needle position over and I'll lengthen it out so you can see it. Hello, there we go. And I haven't pressed it or anything because honestly it just stays in the right place. But it's really, really good with the bar going down the piping, and you get a perfect finish. Honestly, those feet are the best feet ever, the piping foot. It's just such a perfect finish. I love it. So that, if you can see that, is the piping with the flange, and I've top stitched it really, really close. Okay, so the other one I want to show you, I'll just do it on the other side. Oh, Robyn, you've got your cutting board here. I'll just cut this nice and straight. So this time I'm going to do another bit of piping. I love piping. I use it on so many things. And I've got a bit of fabric here. Is that going to be long enough? You can make it out of scraps. There's no rules because I can cut this all off. So I'm just going to use up my scrap. And remember to move your needle position back to the right. Even further, I've forgotten. And I just hold those threads started off, and I'm just using up a scrap of fabric because I'm going to show you how to trim it. So don't waste any fabric. You can use all your fabric scraps, especially for something as small as making piping. Now this foot also can sew the pearls and the sequins on, so it's not just a piping foot. It's a brilliant foot. And cut the thread ribbon. Right, so you know how you've got all this excess fabric. Say you wanted to put it into a garment and it needed to be exactly the right size. You can use your add a quarter ruler. Now I did not know about this. One of my customers told me about this. So the add a quarter ruler looks like this. It's really good for this job. So it looks like this, and it's got a little lip, and you can see there's a flat piece here, and this is a higher piece. And why it works really good for this is because I can add it beside my piping cord, and it butts up against it. If I go like this, can you see that? So it butts up against my piping cord, and the little lip sits there. So when I lay it down and I butt that up against it, this is just so good. You can cut right beside it and get a perfect 1/4 inch seam to put in a garment. Actually, I've cut through all of that. How cool is that? So there's your perfect 1/4 inch seam. Isn't that brilliant? I did not know that, and I think that's great. So it's this ruler is for adding a 1/4 inch, but it's perfect for cutting your piping. Brilliant. Now, with this one, we're going to add another fabric on it, but it's going in the front. So now that I've cut off my seam allowance, never mind, I'm just going to cut a little flange, fold a little flange, should I say. Is that going to show up? Oh, yeah. So this one is going to go onto here like this. So what I'm going to do is I've pressed it in half, then I'm going to open it out, and my seam is going to go onto my fold. So I am just going to stitch down there perfectly straight there, and I'm going to put my needle position 1 click to the left. So I'm actually sewing that seam down, but I'm going 1 click to the left, and that's going to sew that perfectly down there. So it's going inside my last lot of stitching. So this is adding a little feature at the front, not a flange, beg your pardon. It's adding this little bit here. This little bit here. So I'm just adding another colour to the front of my piping before I put it onto my fabric. All right. So I will just stitch this down. I have to remember to move slowly, and I don't. So I apologise. So this is kind of a matching fabric with this, so it will look really nice with it. Scissors. So with this one, this is the look that you're going to have. So you've got your piping, but you've also got your accent fabric, and you just can decide how much of the accent fabric you want to see. So this time I am actually going to iron that. Okay, so I'm going to give this one a little press. And again, if I wanted to, and I'll press this, if I wanted to do a feature, I could top stitch that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch this onto this end, and then you can decide, I can decide how little or much I would want of that. But because this isn't even, I would want to straighten that up now, because otherwise I won't get an even finish. So I'll just move all my bits and bobs out of the road, just fire them all out, and I'll trim this up. So I'm going to lay it on the 1 inch mark, and I think I'm just going to move it over so it's nice and accurate. I think it's going to be cut at 3/4 of an inch. There we go, that looks like that's going to work. Watch your fingers when you're doing this, because you're not working with, you haven't got much fabric to work with. Just make sure you trim it up so it's nice and even. So I'm going 3/4. There we go. So now when I stitch this on here, I'll use my ordinary foot again. There and there. And now I'm going to stitch this on, and I can decide how much of a feature. So if I run my foot along the edge, I'm going to get quite a lot of that fabric, and I don't want as much fabric as that. So I'm just going to move my needle position back to the center and 1 click to the left, and that's what I'd like to do. So it's quite good because it's a nice wide foot, and you can decide how far you want it, and I'm just going to run it down there. And it'll be nice and even against the piping because I've trimmed it. Trimming as you go, ironing as you go gives you better results. So I'll press that and show you the finished result. So they're quite different, but they can look really, really nice depending on what you'd like to do. So you can see a totally different result. So that one has got more fabric showing as a feature and the piping on the top. And then this one has got the flange at the top and the piping underneath it. So you can decide what look you like. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to do your bindings again. I've shown you before, but it's good to see it again. So we'll just fire all that down there. So this is your fabric, and you want to bind the edge of it. Now there's many ways to do it, but the easiest way to do it excuse me, is to get your fabric, and when I'm doing something small I cut it 2 1/4 inches. That one's a 2 inch one, but I normally cut it about 2 1/4 inches. Just find my scissors somewhere. So I'll leave this foot on because I haven't got the other one right with me. So here's 2 ways of doing it. You can either fold it in half and stitch it from the right side, and then hand stitch it from the wrong side, or you can fold it in half. Oh, my fabric doesn't reach. It's all right, I'll put it on this edge. Oh no, I'll just go like this. Fold it in half and stitch it on the wrong side here. So I'm going to use this foot because you might not have a 1/4 inch foot. I'm going to put my jewel feed down, and I'm going to put my needle position just to the right, so I've got pretty much a narrow seam, 1/4 inch seam. And now I'm going to bring my stitch length back. And I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam along the wrong side of my quilt or my pocket or my wall hanging, and I'm just stitching it down. And this is where people get very confused. So when you have done your first row and you're going to turn it over, the biggest thing you want to do, the main thing you want to do, is cover this row of stitching. So by doing your narrow seam, that now has come over and will cover over here. Okay, so you can use your quilt clips, or if you haven't got quilt clips, you can put a pin. But you don't want to, how can I show you this? You don't want to just gently put it and it end up like obviously untidy and not reaching your stitching line. It must come over and reach your stitching line. Okay, so just bring it all the way over. That looks quite cool, that stripe, and pin to hold if you haven't got any quilt clips, because mine are all at home and I'm at work. And another pin. Now when you've pinned, you will be able to see where you've pinned on the back, correct? So on the front I've pinned on this folded edge, and on the back, pretty good, the pins should be pretty much on that edge of that fabric. Kind of hard to see, but you can't really see the pins. So what that tells me is, when I put my edge stitch foot number 10 on to top stitch, I'm just going to clear it all so it goes all back to normal. I'm going to put my edge stitch foot number 10 on, and I'm going to put my needle right down the middle, which won't work. So I'm going to do 2 clicks to the right, and I want to just catch that fabric. I need one more click. You can tell straight away when you start, you can tell if it's going to work. And I'm now going to use my pin as my holder, and I'm just going to stitch a couple of stitches, make sure it's all perfect, and then use my pin and just cover my row of stitching. Okay, so I'm just covering my row of stitching, and I'm using my pin as my holder. You can use an awl, but I find a pin's really good when it's a small little area. Okay, so my pin is holding it while I stitch it. So I like to top stitch on the right side when I'm doing bindings. Go, and all the way down. If you don't want to do it this way, you can sew it on the right side and you can hand stitch it on the wrong side. It's honestly your choice. You can decide how you'd like to finish it off. Okay, so you can probably see quite clearly now I've got a perfect top stitch all the way down there. And then when I turn it over, it's just catching on the back. It honestly, how can I see that? Oh, you can probably see it on this one. So if I shine that on there, you can see when it comes down, if you get it perfectly even, it kind of goes in the ditch. The odd time I've missed it there, no one is going to matter. It's on the inside of a pocket. Okay, so it's pretty darn good. But by top stitching you get that beautiful, perfect edge all the way along. So, you know, have fun with colours, have fun with different braids. This is the one I did with the wool that I showed you. Bright coloured stitching, bindings, different pipings, and see what you can create. So these armchair caddies, one of the ladies said, Robyn, you've definitely got old using them. I have been using one of these for at least 20 years. They are really, really handy when you're in the lounge because you've got all your bits and pieces if you want to do a bit of handwork. Now, all I've done on this one is I laid some of my fabrics down and I just lay fabric on top of them and did fancy stitches. It was just a fun thing to do because I wanted to put a pin cushion on top because I'm always needing pins when I'm stitching, and I've quilted this, and what I did for quilting it was I used my old blanket. So I just got an old blanket, I cut out a square and put it behind my fabric and freehand quilted it. Now this is wool. So what I do is once I've done using it, you can unpick the binding. This was a lady's and she wanted me to throw out the edge of the blanket that I made smaller. So say I've quilted this piece under here, what I do then is I just get all the scraps and I chop them up to little bits and I use it as stuffing. So I utilize all my pieces of wool because wool is the best thing to keep your pins sharp. Okay? So don't think you've got to go and buy wool stuffing. You can use old blankets, and you can, as long as you've got wool in the top part, you can have polyester fibre in the bottom. But when you're stuffing it, always make sure you've got wool underneath for your pins to go through. There's my handy hint of the day. So this can be made any size. Now you wouldn't have noticed, but I'll show you now. Can you see that they are totally different lengths? This side goes on the inside of the seat, and this goes over the arm, and this goes on the outer side of the seat so it can be deeper. So if I show you it sitting here, you can see that that is a lot deeper, so that would be on the right hand side of my chair, and this side would be on the inside. So if I turn it around, you can see clearly that the inside one is not as deep because otherwise it would go down and would fold under. So you always have to have, well, I like the outside one to be wider. Okay? So that's just something really different that I thought I'd show you, because what I'm doing is trying to teach you what to use for the other bits you might have cut off, what we did last time, and this one, and you could make it into something really, really useful. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's something you will actually make and use, but it could be a fun thing to make for yourself, for your husband, for the grandchildren, for anybody. And you know what? If you know somebody that's in a rest home, it would be lovely to make them one to be able to put their book or their magazines or their newspaper in there, or their glasses. This one actually would be perfect size to pop your glasses in. Maybe then I wouldn't lose them all the time. So yes, that will be quite handy actually. I better put pockets in this one for my husband. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something, and I will see you all again next month.